Welcome to Grover Load, and we have Nvidia's announcement and release of their 5060 Ti with reviews being out. It's been interesting to go through them all and try to figure out what's going on Nvidia and why are you still releasing a card that has 8 gig frame buffer, 8 gigs of VRAM on it. I don't think they should have been charging $379 for 8 gigs of frame buffer, right? What is it, what do they have it at? 479, 429. Yeah, it was 429. Check that on Newegg. There's one card for that price, only one, and then it jumped up 50 bucks. But that's where Nvidia should have been with the frame buffer, is 16 gigs, not 8. And if they wanted to, they could have done 12, kind of like the 4070 was 12. Now, not 4070, 5070 was 12. But that's where Nvidia decided to go. This is the price that they wanted to. Now, granted, there's been tariffs and everything else here in the United States, and that's a whole nother discussion on tariffs uh, as well, if I wanted to get into there. But I just want to give my thoughts on this card and value of it, right? There is not much to convince me that the 8 gig is worth it, right? Yeah, if you went down to that 199 price point, okay, you can convince me. That's where it probably should be. Remember when the RX 580 was 199? Then it was like 189 for a while. Yeah, remember those days? And for 4 gigs, and then the 8 gig was well, it was like 199, and then 209 for a while. That's where it kind of sat for a really long time, and that's where kind of the 8 gig should be now. The 8 gig should be that new 4 gig. That's where we should be. I, I can understand maybe a 50-50 being an 8 gig. The 5060, I think that should be where you're into that 12 gig, 16 gig area. And I think that would actually help the perception of this. Now, if you're looking for a GPU and you only have so much money to spend and you're looking for a new card, you're kind of stuck. Now, that's that's where we're at with this. Now, let's talk a little bit about, before I go more into like the value side of this, let's talk about performance, because you're probably wondering where I stand on the performance and what I'm thinking about this. You know, I've looked at a lot of reviews today, listened to a lot of them, watched them, trying to figure out what's the best thing for this card and where where we're sitting with everything, right? I do expect at some point AMD to come out with a 9060 series card, and they're going to have a 9070 GRE at some point. Where those sit, and if they're released in the United States, may have some determination of where, you know, if granted, if they release in your country, you're going to have more options. But the 5060 is, you know, 7%, 5 to 7% behind that 4070 of last year. That's where I really would have liked to seen this card leapfrog, right? When I'm looking at these, I like to see it leapfrog the performance of the last generation's higher number card. And even if we just take off I like to see if you take off the TIs, but we all know that's not happening right now. The AMD, the 6800 XT, right? That's a couple generations ago. That's you know, roughly about 8% to 9, someplace in there, to 9-10%. You know, you have it's the 3080 is 12% better, and this is better than the 5060 is better than the 3070 Ti, but about, you know, 7, 8, 9% there. So the 7700 XT, right, is 6% slower. I wouldn't consider, well, depending upon the price, I wouldn't really consider that 7700 XT, but that 7800 XT, that's about 14-15% faster in certain games. So you take a look at that, of where that is, and where you're jumping around, you're like, okay, is this worth it, right? The 3060 Ti, if you're upgrading from that or a 1060, someplace in there, and you're wanting something, this can be something worthwhile. Now, I would have expected at this point that these cards would have now enabled ray tracing without all the extra stuff for kind of the mainstream. Now, I'm not including like multi-frame generation and stuff. Just, you know, everyone's going to be able to get ray tracing now. You can start turning it on. It's good to go. And it doesn't look like that is fully the case in all games. Looks like you're getting some games that are a little bit weaker. Now, I'd like to have these cards to test for myself, be able to go through a suite of tests as well. I don't, so we're going off of what other people are seeing out there, and I just would have liked more out of it. You know, this is one of those things where it would have been a lot better to see a lot more out of these cards, performance-wise, than the minor upgrade it seems, or not the leapfrogging of last generations where I would like to seen it. Right, you're about, you know, the 4060. Where is that again? I had that on this chart here I was looking at and writing down my numbers. Of course, I clicked off. But the 4060 Ti I thought was what, about 12% or so, 15%, someplace in there, 12 to 15%, yeah. And that was, you know, that's a nice little jump, but it's not the leap that I would have liked to seen of getting over that 40. That's how I kind of think of this, not just I'd like to see a percentage upgrade on the top end card, right? And then you want to see a nice jump there, and then you want to see some leapfrogging in the lower gen cards of the last gen, right? Bring that performance down. And we're getting into a point where it's not really bringing the performance down into a Gamers Nexus did a great video on this, just bringing the performance down into later generations. You know, they have a whole chart there with percentages and everything else, which I highly recommend you go take a look at and check out some of these other reviews. You know, Gamers Nexus did a good job. Hardware Unbox, DeBauer, Tech Yes City had a unique video on it. He didn't have a review yet, but I expect I'll watch his review once it gets out too. But these cards here, just it's kind of, you know, even Wendell, you know, he said if you're using it on AI, it looks like a good AI card. If you're getting that 16 gig, you know, it's not going to be like a 5090, but you can put quite a bit into a 16 gig frame buffer. At least there you have it. Now we'll see how long this all lasts, and we'll see how long, well, this all lasts with the MSRP, which we're already sold out. Where's the, again, I'm clicking off what I had. But the Newegg page, right, is already sold out of everything, and your MSRP for the 16 gig is $429. Then you go up, and it's $50 more on up from there. How long is all these cards going to last at these prices? Because it seems like a lot of areas they want to have the be able to make the most money, whether it is tariff related or not. I'm saying companies are, you know, greedy companies, right? They do want to have their money. They can put it underneath the skies of tariffs right now and raise their prices and get away with it. So this is something that to keep an eye on. But you know, I'm looking at a lot of these 50, 68 gig cards, and it looks like they're at 420 here in the United States. So they're $10 cheaper than the 16 gig card that was MSRP. Yeah, yikes. I'm to the point of, while I like to see some of these cards, I'm sitting on the sidelines because it's just, for these new things, it seems like if we're going to keep supporting all the high prices, and this is one thing Tech Yes City's even pointed out, does the innovation then just stop and the prices just keep going up? You put what Gamers Nexus did out there, plus kind of where the prices are going. At what point do companies say, we just have to kind of release a minor upgrade of 10%, 5%, and we get to charge $200 more? And does this get out of hand? I think at some point that would backfire on them anyways. But for those that want a good deal in a product here, may not get it for years if that's the case, right? However, there is one option here that I think is the best option, which is use GPUs. Go online, find used GPUs. I think this is actually the best option. I will do a video on used GPUs here in the United States and take a look at that. But overall, right, if you're looking for one of these, you're pretty close, unless you want the newest technologies on these cars, where multi-frame gen, DLSS 4, I think some of that stuff is in the 40 series, but not multi-frame gen. But if you if you don't want the latest tech, some of these prior GPUs are probably your best option. These used options here, you may be able to get a good deal without breaking the bank. It's getting ridiculous here, but this is just some of my random thoughts on, yeah, they are random, but the random thoughts on the value of this card, where I think the best value is the used market. And if you can get something performance-wise that is maybe a little bit better for the same price or lower, that's where I'd be looking. And the GPU in my desktop right now is a used GPU. I bought it off an eBay. So that's kind of how I look at this, because I'm just willing to say, you know what, at this point it's used, but if I need to repaste it, I'll repaste it, whatever else. That's the best option, and let these prices come to where they seem more reasonable. If you want a new GPU, right, you're not going to be in that market. But if you're looking for a brand new GPU and you're not one that buys it very often, and you're just not looking for something cheap and temporary, this is where the B580 from Intel could actually be a sweet spot if it came in at like that 199. That would, even if they got like 220, I like 199, but you do that and you put or 570 at 199 with the 10 and 12 gigs, it may be something where people look at that and be like, you know what, I'm going to keep this card for a little bit longer. The 16 gigs, the 12 gigs, the 10 gigs are way better than the 8. And that's where Nvidia should have went. They had an opportunity here, but they, again, didn't capitalize on it, and we will suffer the consequences for that action. But let me know what your thoughts are on these cards in the comments below. Be more than happy to check them out, because I'm kind of, you can kind of see where I'm in this whole GPU launching cycle. Ah, yeah, this is it. We're going to be sold out and have higher prices. Okay. It's not like the MSRPs were even real to begin with. That's where I'm at. Let me know where you're at. Thanks so much for watching Gravelone and helping support this channel. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, watch another one of my videos. All that really does help out the channel a lot. Till next time, God bless.